My name is Surya Prakash. I'm the program director at DAKSH. We're an independent think tank working on law and justice system reforms for the last 10 years. This event is a part of our latest initiative on direct tax system reform. I'm so glad many of you are here, veterans. I was just thinking what I could share before I hand over the mic to others and Justice Anita Sumanth for her keynote address. What struck me was something that I read long back, that in the 40s or the 50s, just 2-3 kilometers from here on the Marina Beach, Dr. S. Radhakrishnan was felicitated, and he gave a speech, and there was a huge, massive turnout. And it seems, his biography says, it seems he commented after that, when philosophy becomes so popular, then there is something that we have to think more about. We are not here as all of us all of you tax professionals and practitioners and adjudicators, judges, tribunal members. I'm sure you attend a lot of discussions on that latest law change or the landmark judgment. This is not one of those conversations. This is taking a step back. This is taking a moment to look at the functioning of the system as a whole and what it means to citizens and businesses, and is it at all giving them a sense of certainty? Are things being handled in a timely fashion? And it's so encouraging to see such a encouraging, enthusiastic participation for a discussion like this, which I feel tells you more about the system than anything else. Our work, DAKSH's work on direct tax system reform was initiated just a few months ago. We are doing this in partnership with Esperti Fiscalli. It's an institution that has been newly set up by veteran IRS officers, Mr. Pavan Kumar, Mr. Sanjay Vermaji, Dr. Zakir Thomas. And it was so refreshing for us when they reached out to us, and so validating for the work at DAKSH we've done over the years to say, we want to work with you on direct tax system reform. The first roundtable, similar such roundtable, was held in Bangalore in November, where Justice K.V. Aravinda of Karnataka High Court delivered the keynote address, and a very engaging, interactive session that was. This is going to be a series of discussions we're going to have across the country, and I'm so glad we're having this in Chennai right after Bangalore. Chennai has led the development of India in so many ways, not the least on taxation itself. One, I can immediately think of the levy of sales tax by Rajaji in the 50s, how that led to what we now call as GST. Right? So many things that Tamil Nadu and Chennai takes the lead in. The tax bar is so strong, such a wonderful work that is being done out of the Madras High Court and the tribunal benches here. So I'm glad and I'm delighted to invite all of you to this evening. Ma'am, thank you so much for spending time. We are indebted to you for, I know it's a subject close to your heart, so I did not say anything more. Like many of the DAKSH conversations, we hope this is going to be a constructive, solution-oriented, forward-looking conversation on what can be different, what should be different. We will follow the Chatham House rules, so please do not attribute comments to anyone outside the room. There will be no formal recording of the interaction other than the address by Justice Anita Sumanth. After that, the video recording will also be stopped. But just before I hand over the mic to ma'am, I will request Sanjay Vermaji to share some context setting.
Hello. Okay. Honorable Justice Dr. Anita Sumanth, Honorable Vice President ITAT, Mr. George K. George, Honorable members of ITAT, senior professionals, retired IRS officers, industry representatives, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to set the context for today's discussion on the direct tax ecosystem to bring in certainty, finality, and a reduction in litigation in direct tax matters in India. Today's discussions are aimed to recommend improvements to unclog the judicial pipeline by reducing direct tax litigation and hopefully build a smarter dispute ecosystem. A system which will not discourage, unnecessary litigation, but also encourage early resolution and therefore bring in certainty and finality in tax assessment. To put the problem statement in the correct perspective, let us look at the pendency of appeals at various levels and the expected timelines for their resolution, which is better known to you. In September 2025, over 5.77 lakh appeals were pending at various levels, majority of them at CIT appeals level. And this numbers must have further increased from that time. And these cases involved tax arrears of over rupees 47 lakh crores. Rupees 47 lakh crores. To put this in perspective, that last year's direct tax collection was little over rupees 22 lakh crores. So this is more than double the amount is in disputed tax demands. So definitely the current system is overwhelmed, leading to unproductive use of scarce legal resources, and prolonged disputes adversely impact the investment decisions and entrepreneurship. In this background, the two organizations have come together to undertake an academic research to study the problem and suggest changes for institutional reforms. Already we have been introduced by Mr. Surya Prakash, but to reiterate, DAKSH is a non-profit organization working in the field of judicial reform since 2015. And Esperti Fiscalli is a research and advisory platform set up by 3 tax veterans, Dr. Zakir Thomas, who is sitting with me, retired DG Systems, Shri RSVS Pawan Kumar, retired PCIT and tax advisor to various industries, and myself, Sanjay Kumar Verma, retired member CVDT. And we had held a similar program in Bangalore in month of November, which was a very productive engagements came out of that, and we are enthused by your presence. So just to put the context in a slightly focused manner, we will try and look at the root causes of this prolonged litigation and continuing problems. Is it due to legal complexity or is it due to discretion of tax officers? What contributes more to disputes? The complexity of laws themselves or inconsistent interpretation and application by tax officers? Considering that number of cases selected for scrutiny has come down greatly, but has it reduced litigation? If not, then what is the reason and which is the biggest area of litigation? Are these disputes primarily as a result of structural issues, inadequate resources, human resources, otherwise, or behavioral factors? Are we filing more appeals due to risk aversion in the department, maybe due to fear of CAG, vigilance, audit? Is that the reason? What is the quality and timeliness of response by the taxpayer to notices and queries by the tax department? How far does it affect the discretion of the tax officer? And at which stage do the most disputes arise? We are trying to study at some length whether it's at pre-filing, processing of returns, assessment, appeals, or refund, or at enforcement function. Does it tell us where are the weaknesses? And in recent years, some developments have taken place. For example, there has been movement toward faceless assessments. How has the shift to faceless assessment impacted the process? What is the second order impact are you seeing? And is the increase of use of data analytics in assessment leading to better targeting of genuine tax evasion? There was some discussion over coffee that since demonetization, probably the number of litigation appeals have gone up, particularly of cash deposits So is that use of data analytics leading to more such assessments? Is CPC contributed to litigation, setting up of centralized processing center? Has it impacted litigation volume, taxpayer grievances, and timelines? And whether the review powers of IT officers being properly exercised, are they leading to disputes per se? Then we will also look at the various dispute resolution models. There are alternative dispute resolution models, for example, DRC, which has become functional in a small way in Chennai, dispute settlement schemes, and various enhancements of monetary threshold of filing appeals. Do they bring a timeline to finality? In this context, we are looking at some quick wins. Where can we suggest some changes for direct tax system reform and also long-term structural reforms? And we will look at behavioral changes also during this discussion. But kindly note that this is a constructive discussion, not a fault-finding session, and we should not use this as a forum for listing out a litany of grievances against the income tax department or judicial forum. Instead of looking at petty issues, it will be good if we can focus at the big picture. We are trying to look at high-level discussion, and which will contribute to better judgments and better suggestions. With these few words, I welcome you to this roundtable, and I request Honorable Dr. Justice Anita Sumanth to give the keynote address. Thank you.
Good evening to all of you. I am very happy to be participating in this program today, where, as Surya said, the subject is close to my heart, and particularly in the context in which the program has been set, certainty and timelines in direct tax matters. I have been following DAKSH's work over the years in the area of general institutional reform. But I was not aware that they are making a foray into revenue laws as well. So when I was approached to participate in this function on direct taxes, it was a pleasant surprise. I wish this joint endeavor between DAKSH and the fiscal expertise a very fruitful and a productive tenure. Tax, as you will all agree, is a very, very exciting area of practice. Intellectually highly stimulating and can be lucrative as well. There is always something going on in tax law, and that could have a flip side. You have got your budgets and your finance acts, bills and acts of every year, which keeps the professionals very busy, permanently busy, and the assessees permanently on tenterhooks. But the flip side of that is the uncertainty that it brings to the law itself with respect to the frequent changes that are brought about. This year, to top it all, we have an entirely new enactment, the 2025 Act, which, as I understand, yet to be tested, but as I understand, not an edition of the 1961 Act, but a brand new baby. So this is thus a very appropriate time to be pausing, taking stock, so that you have the directions when you move forward very clearly etched in our minds. When the program was introduced, Surya had said that we have a strong past as far as tax law is concerned, with technology becoming a very, very big part of tax administration now. It's not just the past, but the future also that we have to take into account. Now, this is a very targeted discussion, and we have got very committed stakeholders. So I am going to dispense with all the preliminaries. I'll just lay out a few points, few talking points that I have in mind, and then you can open it up to discussion as you think fit. The first is a refrain that we very often hear: arrears and disposal. Now, when we say arrears is not only common to tax law. We've got arrears in every branch of the law. And in the judicial institution, we have a committee at the very apex called the National Court Management Systems Committee. And we had a subcommittee there to deal with arrears. So one common misconception that we have as far as arrears is concerned is all pendency is arrears. That's not so. Because when a case is filed today, it does not become an arrear today or tomorrow. There is a process that has to be undertaken in order for that case to get assimilated into the system. For instance, you could say service has to be complete. Pleadings have to be complete. So it is only when all these things are completed that, and it still is shown as a pending matter on the docket, that it becomes an arrear. Since this room has academically inclined persons, if you are interested, you could access the subcommittee report of the arrears subcommittee, where we had adopted a formula on how do you actually determine. Do you take the mean or the median or the mode, or what is the methodology that you adopt? We had some statisticians on board with us. You remember that meeting? So that would give you a way to assimilate what exactly your arrears are and come to a proper idea of what your tax arrears are as far as the income tax arrears are concerned. Now, from the High Court, I would say that as far as arrears are concerned, service must be complete, and in some branches of tax law, we call for the records. But in tax work, we really don't call for the records, unless because we go with the pleadings that are there on the file. We've got the case compilation, plus we have got the documents that have been filed before the lower authorities, so we go on the basis of that. One suggestion that I have to make is, recently we had a matter before the High Court where there was a difficulty in terms of having the papers, that the evidences that were produced before the CIT appeals and the tribunal. And when we called for the records from the tribunal, there are very few, I'll come to pendency as the next point, there are very few old appeals as far as Madras is concerned, and I think I may not be wrong. When you go nationwide, I think tax matters you may not find long-standing arrears. We have got some old matters, 2008, 2010, 2012, but manageable. If you have got a committed bench that sits for, say, 6 months, you should be able to bring us up to speed. So when we called for the records from the tribunal, there were no records. And in fact, the registry of the tribunal had to write to the assessee and ask them to give whatever papers they had. So my suggestion as far as this is concerned is, for an effective disposal of the appeals, I think the tribunal and the CIT appeals, or the tribunal, should hold the records, both the tribunal records, appeal records and assessment records, till the disposal of the tax case appeal and till the time for filing of SLP is over, like we do in criminal law. I am presently heading the criminal bench, so you should excuse me if I draw some analogies with criminal law. In criminal law, when you dispose of the material objects, we say you hold it till such time the appeal period is over. So likewise, in these matters also, perhaps the authorities should hold on to the records till such time the appeal time is over, so that we are not forced in 2026 to remand a matter of assessment year 2006-07. We don't like to do that. But sometimes we are forced to do that. So that's one suggestion. Now, second is, we spoke of pendency. There is a pipeline for tax litigation. It comes through the CIT appeals, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, High Court, and the Supreme Court. Our arrears are not very heavy. We don't have any 256 references, only 260A appeals. Even in the writ courts, pendency may be 5 to 6 years old. And the trend for the last 5 to 6 years, both in writ admission and in tax case, statutory appeals, is disposed at the time of admission as far as possible. So that has helped to keep this pipeline uncluttered. As I understand, the block at the moment is at the stage of CIT appeals. And I think the earlier speaker also referred to the fact that there are a substantial number of appeals pending as a glut at the stage of CIT appeals. I too have some of the statistics that he mentioned. I think we have both taken our statistics from DAKSH. The income tax department also gets its statistics, because I got this from the DAKSH report that was available online, that the glut is at the stage of CIT appeals. Here my suggestion would be that the department could consider putting in place a policy to deal with disposal. Because if you have a glut at one stage, what happens is then the number of appeals before the tribunal becomes, over the weeks and months and years, it becomes less. And there have been times when, whether it is the tribunal or some smaller courts that we have, there is a danger that there may not be work tomorrow for that institution. So if you want to keep the flow uncluttered, there cannot be a glut at any point. So perhaps the revenue could look at a policy to say that an appeal should be disposed within 6 months of institution, within a year of institution, or something like that, so that the pipeline stays uncluttered. This is also important to maintain taxpayer confidence and public perception about the department. Otherwise, assessees will say, my appeal will be, and many a time, when we hear writ petitions dealing with stay of matters, they say, we have filed a stay application before the CIT appeals. And then our first instinct is to say, let there be a stay for 3 months, let the appeal be disposed of. But you find that the order that would be preferred is, let there be a stay till the disposal of the appeal. Because the assessees know that that appeal could take 6 years to be disposed of. So if you want to prevent a situation like that and have a free flow of litigation, there should be some measures within the department for timely disposal of the appeals. The monetary policy that we have today is a very, very laudable move. And implementation of this policy is perhaps one of the reasons why the tax docket is under control today, because we find that about a substantial percentage of the tax appeals have been filed at the instance of the revenue. So with this monetary policy, it has brought it under check. ADR, alternate dispute resolution mechanisms. The old-timers will know that in the Income Tax Act earlier, we had a provision where at that time it was the Inspecting Assistant Commissioner, IAC, who had the discretion to waive certain amounts of penalty. The provision was removed thereafter. I think the reasons were very obvious. The quantum of litigation became much more, and one wanted a check on the discretion that was given to an individual to waive the penalty. Today we have got the Settlement Commission, and we have also got the Authority for Advance Rulings, which is not a settlement mechanism, but it is an advance ruling mechanism. I'll come to the AAR shortly. The 2023 Mediation Act has institutionalized mediation for civil and commercial disputes, but tax disputes stand outside the domain of mediation. And the reason for this is evident, as tax assessment is traditionally looked at as a non-consensual demand by a sovereign. So that's perhaps the reason why it has stayed outside the ambit of alternate dispute resolution mechanisms like mediation or conciliation. And with my experience, I would also think that we should be cautious in bringing measures like mediation and conciliation into tax dispute resolution. Firstly, the volume of assessments and the range of issues that will be involved will make it very difficult to standardize. When you say that this is something that can go to a mediator, it is very difficult to standardize what sort of issues can go to a mediator or a conciliator for a resolution. Secondly, in order to be impactful, the dispute resolution mechanism must make a significant inroad into either the quantum of the pendency or the arrears of the demand. The element of discretion which is there in ADR makes this very difficult to apply in tax matters. My suggestion is perhaps one could look at what we have in indirect taxes, which is mandatory pre-consultation. We have this in customs and excise, mandatory pre-consultation. A show cause notice is issued, and this helps to crystallize the issues which are going to be put against the taxpayer. And once the show cause notice is issued, there is a period of 60 days or 90 days under the relevant circular where the assessee is mandatorily called for pre-consultative process. And we find that there have been many an occasion when some of the issues on discussion have been dropped, or sometimes the assessee accepts it. Of course, you will have caveats to say that these will not be the basis for levy of penalty, etc. But there is a template already there as far as indirect taxes is concerned. So I don't see why this cannot be adopted in the arena of direct tax litigation also. This could also act as a screening mechanism for ADR eligibility. For instance, if you are going to approach the settlement commission, you could say that if you come via the mandatory pre-consultation route, then it would make the process before the settlement commission perhaps easier to go through. Now, there are alternative regimes that have been introduced from time to time to reduce your pendency and arrears. For instance, your Samadhan schemes. You have had your Kar Vivad Samadhan scheme or your Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. But again, our experience here teaches us that many a time these schemes are themselves a font for more litigation. So your schemes would be of absolutely no use unless, one, they are absolutely simple and transparent. Unless they are clear, simple and transparent, they will only give rise to more cases and your purpose will not be achieved. The second suggestion as far as the Samadhan scheme is concerned is, as far at least the present ongoing Samadhan scheme, there is no end date by which the process should be complete. So we've had, when we were sitting on the tax portfolio earlier, there were some matters where applications were filed by the SSC, but they were not processed. So this is not at all an attempt to pick a hole, but since this is a round table where we are looking at measures to prevent certain repetitive events that we see, this is a suggestion that I wish to make. If your Samadhan scheme could have an end date, where you say that these are the timelines and by such and such a time, you either accept the application and issue a settlement certificate or you reject the application. You're looking at certainty. The purpose of today's meeting is to arrive at certainty. This will give the taxpayer certainty. Many a time in our experience we find that what an assessee wants is certainty. They value certainty far more than resent an adverse order. So this certainty would have far greater value even if the order were to be adverse. Some of the assessees whose tax cases were before us said, we have filed applications, but they have been pending for many months, and therefore we would much rather argue the appeals. So the purpose of the scheme then becomes lost in such a circumstance. We are conscious of the fact that in some cases there are writ petitions filed by assessees that may hold up the decision making as far as the Samadhan applications are concerned. But the observations and the suggestions that have been made would still be valid, because if you see the percentage of matters where those writ petitions are filed, percentage is very few. Writ petitions filed challenging the Samadhan matters, percentage may not be very high. And if the simplicity had been provided to begin with, even those writ petitions may have been avoided. The authority for advance ruling right now is in Chapter 14b provides for an advance ruling in the case of non-residents or transactions involving a non-resident. Is the position the same?
Yes.
Position is the same. Position is the same even today.
But it is not functioning.
AR is not functioning.
Incumbent.
So, but the board is not functioning now. Is it functioning? Right. So I would perhaps suggest that you take it one step further, and like they do in indirect tax regimes, you have an advance ruling for domestic transactions as well. It is the usual caveat. You have it under, you had it under sales tax law, where you have an authority for advance ruling to give the assessee an advance ruling on a question of law that is posed, rate of tax, or whether a particular transaction would be liable to tax. That ruling would be binding qua that particular assessee, and that would at least ensure that there is some clarity on how interpretation of that question is. It is not that a domestic AAR would automatically resolve the problem of litigation, but it would go some way, some distance in providing certainty in respect of standardized issues qua a particular industry or qua a particular class of assessees. The last point that I wish to make was simplification of processes and robustness of the adjudicatory bodies that we have. The previous speakers mentioned the faceless assessments. Faceless assessments are the way to go as of now. As I understand, all assessments and appeals, barring some charges, are faceless. I can only tell you my experience when we deal with challenges to the faceless assessments. For instance, we have had writ petitions where I think in many of these faceless challenges to the faceless assessments, a link is provided so that the assessee or the representative can appear online. So we were shown a video of a faceless hearing where you only had a table and you had a whirring fan and you had a monologue, which was the submissions of the assessee. So we were mystified as to how any effective dialogue could take place as far as tax issues were concerned in an atmosphere where there was no interaction between the officers and the assessee. So perhaps, of course, we are not on the field now, so we really have no idea as to what a larger public perception is with regard to faceless assessments and appeal processes. But we would suggest that public opinion must be taken as to how to make the process more assessee friendly, more interactive, so that there is a purpose behind the assessment process and the procedure as well. The idea is to do away with interaction so that issues of corruption, etc., are eliminated. That was the issue, that was the understanding with which faceless assessment and appeals were brought in. But the efficiency must be maintained. So in order to maintain it, our suggestion is perhaps have a survey done among tax professionals to find out what the glitches are, what public perception is, and how they could be ironed. Robustness of adjudicatory and appellate bodies. Here again my suggestion is, there was a panel called the Dispute Resolution Panel. And from the experience that we had sitting in the writ courts and in the tax courts, our ideas was that though it was projected and conceived of as a very high power panel, many a time it towed the line of the revenue as a result that the assessee did not get the kind of independent adjudication that they were aiming for. So perhaps again here my suggestion would be that there could be an audit of the adjudicatory bodies. As far as the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal is concerned, I am not saying this because Mr. George is sitting here, but the public perception and the impression has always been that among all the tribunals, the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal as an institution is a very independent and efficient body. So whatever is it that has made the tribunal tick, and whatever are the auditory measures that can be brought in to ensure that the other adjudicatory and appellate bodies also rise to the occasion, should be put in place by the department. Those are the opening remarks that I had to make. I will now leave it to the organizers to carry it forward.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We will now open it up for comments. Before that, Mr. Judge. Sorry, I missed. Please, sir, please.
No, what am I supposed to speak? I was not supposed to speak on...
Respond to the points or anything that you have in mind before the
See, basically, I was hearing Mr. Ramakrishnan today, and he was talking about 1023C. I was just going through the provisions. It has 14 provisos. Reading the first one and coming to the 14th one, you forget what is the other provisions which you have read. The important thing is to make the act simple. How it is to be done, it is for the lawmakers to do this. That is the most important thing. And this is where the litigation starts. And what are the measures to reduce the litigation? In fact, presumptive taxation in more fields, that is one of the most important things. And you have this MAP proceedings which have substantially reduced the TP cases which has come to the tribunal. That is one method. So various methods can be suggested. But primary and most important thing is, even the experts, while reading this particular act, the senior advocates, they do not have a common meeting of minds with regard to the interpretation of an act. So how do you expect a common man, a businessman, who is supposed to, in fact, toe the line of this particular act and make his business decisions? So my first suggestion is, in fact, simplify the act, though there is a step forward in 2025 by bringing the new act. We have to wait and see how far this step is going to fructify. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.